A little girl was about to get into a taxi with a complete stranger. The royal guard couldn't move from his position. He wasn't allowed to. But his horse? His horse had other plans. So what happened next? What exactly did that horse do? Before we reveal it, hit subscribe and let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. It was just past noon at Horse Guards Parade, one of those crisp October days where the air had real bite to it. The kind of afternoon where your breath almost fogs but doesn't quite. Tourists were everywhere, doing their usual thing, phones out, kids pointing, everyone jockeying for position along the metal barriers. The Union Jack snapped overhead in a steady breeze that carried the distant hum of London traffic. Everyone was here for the same reason, to see the ceremony, the uniforms, the discipline. Those famous horses and their riders who never moved, never spoke, never broke character. It was one of those perfectly ordinary British afternoons where tradition did all the talking. Lance Corporal Nathan Bell sat motionless in his saddle, every inch the image of ceremonial perfection. Red tunic pressed sharp enough to cut glass, gold trim catching the weak sunlight, white gauntlets holding the reins with rock-steady hands. His ceremonial sword hung at his left side, untouched. His face showed absolutely nothing, no emotion, no acknowledgement of the cameras clicking away below him. 18 years in the Blues and Royals had taught him that much. 2 tours in Afghanistan, countless ceremonial duties, and enough discipline to make a drill sergeant weep. The man knew how to be a statue when he needed to be. The horse beneath him was Ajax, 13 years old, black as midnight, and trained for both war and parade. Ajax had that particular kind of intelligence that comes from working with humans for years. He'd been Bell's mount for the past 4 years, and in that time they'd developed the kind of partnership that goes beyond training. Ajax could sense Bell's mood through the slightest shift in posture, and Bell could read Ajax's alerts like a radar screen. The horse had served in Afghanistan too, carrying Bell through IED-strewn roads and hostile villages where reading the environment could mean the difference between life and death. He could read a crowd better than most people could read a newspaper, picking up on tension, aggression, fear, all the subtle energies that humans miss. Right now he stood perfectly still, one hoof occasionally shifting against the gravel, ears tracking every sound that mattered. Just in front of the ceremonial barriers stood a little girl who'd been watching them for the past 10 minutes. Millie Harding, 7 years old, first time in London. She wore a bright yellow coat that made her impossible to miss, and had her blonde hair pulled back in pigtails under a pink knitted hat. Her eyes were wide with the kind of wonder you only see in kids. Beside her stood her father, Ben Harding, early 30s, dressed like every other tourist, comfortable jacket, good walking shoes, expensive camera hanging around his neck. He had that patient, slightly tired look that parents get when they're trying to make vacation magical for their kids. "You see that horse, sweetheart," Ben said, crouching down to Millie's level. "He's trained better than most soldiers." "Does he have a name?" Millie asked, never taking her eyes off Ajax. "Probably, but the guards don't usually speak to visitors. It's all part of the tradition," Ben explained. "They're not actors, you know, they're real soldiers." Millie tilted her head, studying the perfectly still rider. "He looks brave." Ben chuckled. "He is. They all are." What neither of them noticed was the man who'd been watching them from about 20 feet away, mid-40s, average height, wearing a tan jacket that had seen better days. Grey stubble covered his jaw, and his hands stayed buried deep in his coat pockets. Nothing particularly memorable about him, which was probably the point. He'd been standing there for almost 15 minutes now, not watching the ceremony, but watching the people, specifically watching families. His eyes had locked onto Millie and her father early on, and when Ben turned away to dig through his camera bag for a different lens, those eyes never left the little girl. Ajax's ear flicked forward, just once, then back. Belle caught the movement but didn't react outwardly. Horses pick up on things humans miss: energy, tension, intent. Ajax had radar for trouble that no amount of training could teach a person. The man in the tan jacket checked his watch, glanced around the crowd, then started walking slowly toward the barriers. Millie had drifted a few steps closer to the ceremonial rope, the way kids do when something fascinating catches their attention. She was completely absorbed in watching Ajax's polished breastplate, the way it gleamed in the weak autumn sunlight. Her father was still kneeling by his camera bag, completely focused on finding the right filter. The man approached from her blind side, moving casual and unhurried. "Hey there, little one," he said softly, appearing beside her like he'd materialized from thin air. Millie looked up. This wasn't her dad. This wasn't anyone she knew. He smelled like stale coffee and cigarettes, and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Your dad's looking for you," the man continued, his voice calm and reassuring. "He sent me to come get you." That didn't make sense to Millie. "He's right over there," she said, pointing toward Ben, who was still clearly visible 20 feet away. No, plans changed," the man said quickly. "He said to bring you to the taxi. You're running late for your lunch reservation." His hand settled on her shoulder, not hard, not painful, but firm, possessive, like he had every right to touch her. "I think we were going to see the changing of the guard," Millie said, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "Change of plans," the man repeated. "Come on now. The taxi's right around the corner. Won't take but a minute." His fingers curled around her upper arm, applying just enough pressure to get her moving. That's when Ajax's nostrils flared. From his position in the saddle, Belle was taking in every detail. The man's approach pattern, the way he'd isolated the child from her parent, the practiced smoothness of his lie, the hand placement, the directional pressure, the timing. Belle's military training was screaming at him. This was textbook predator behavior. But ceremonial guards don't move without clear and present danger. They don't break formation for conversations between strangers and children. They definitely don't intervene in what might just be a misunderstanding. Ajax wasn't bound by those same rules. "Come on now, sweetheart," the man said, guiding Millie toward the street. "Your dad's waiting in the taxi." Millie looked back toward her father, confusion and the first hints of fear flickering across her face. "I don't think—" "It's fine," the man cut her off. "Just a quick ride. He's already paid the driver." She planted her feet, resisting slightly, not fighting, but not cooperating either, so he pulled a little harder. Ajax huffed, sharp and loud, like a steam engine releasing pressure. The man glanced up at the horse. "Easy there, big guy. Just talking to her." Millie's eyes darted to Ajax, some instinct telling her the horse was reacting to something important. Her feet scraped against the pavement as she tried to step back toward the barriers. The man tightened his grip. Ajax huffed again, louder this time, deep and resonant. "What's his problem?" the man muttered, but there was tension in his voice now, irritation. Behind his ceremonial helmet, Belle's eyes were locked on the interaction. His right hand barely moved. Just the slightest adjustment of the reins, invisible to anyone watching, but perfectly clear to Ajax. The horse felt it immediately. Permission. Authority. The signal that said, "Something's wrong here and we need to do something about it." Ajax shifted his weight, taking half a step forward. His rear hoof struck the stone with a sharp crack that echoed off the surrounding buildings like a gunshot. Several tourists looked up from their phones. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Did the horse just move?" Another voice, "They're not supposed to do that, are they?" The man had managed to get Millie almost to the edge of the ceremonial area. Just ahead of them, a black taxi sat idling at the curb, rear door hanging open like a mouth. The driver sat motionless behind the wheel, both hands visible, staring straight ahead. "I really need to tell my dad," Millie said, her voice smaller now. "He already knows," the man insisted. "He's the one who arranged it. Come on, we're holding up traffic." But Millie had stopped moving entirely. Something deep in her 7-year-old brain was screaming that this was wrong, even if she couldn't articulate why. Ajax's ears went flat against his head. Then came the stomp. Not a shift of weight or a nervous fidget. A deliberate, powerful strike of iron horseshoe against stone that rang out like a bell. The man flinched instinctively. Millie jumped but didn't move toward him. "Jesus Christ," the man snapped, his careful facade starting to crack. "What is wrong with that animal?" But Ajax wasn't looking at him. The horse was reading everything. The tension in Millie's shoulders, the way her arm was twisted at an unnatural angle, the rigid set of the man's grip. Horses are prey animals. They've spent millions of years learning to spot predators, to read threat signals that humans miss entirely. And everything about this situation was setting off every alarm bell in Ajax's ancient brain. The man tried to guide Millie around Ajax's front, toward the taxi. The horse moved too, one fluid sideways step that put his massive bulk directly in their path. People were definitely watching now. Phones were coming up all around the barriers. An elderly woman nudged her husband. "Something's not right here, Harold." A teenager with a travel blog was already filming, sensing this wasn't normal ceremony behavior. Parents started pulling their own children closer, some primitive instinct telling them to pay attention to what the horse was doing. "Is the horse protecting that girl?" someone asked. "They don't usually move like that," said another voice. "I've been here 3 times. They never move." A man with a thick Yorkshire accent called out, "That bloke's not her father. Look at her face. She's scared." The crowd was starting to get it. Slowly but surely, people were beginning to understand that what they were witnessing wasn't part of any ceremony. The man tried to go around the other side. Ajax followed, smooth as silk, his flank forming an impenetrable barrier between the child and the street. "Get control of your bloody horse," the man yelled up at Belle, his composure finally starting to fracture. "This is harassment. I'm trying to help this child." Belle didn't respond, didn't blink, didn't show any reaction at all, but his left leg pressed almost imperceptibly against Ajax's side. The smallest possible signal, invisible to everyone except the horse who felt it. The man tried a different approach, his voice taking on a wheedling, desperate quality. "Look, mate, this is all a big misunderstanding. The girl's confused, that's all. Kids get mixed up in crowds like this. Her dad asked me to bring her to the taxi. He's already inside waiting." But his story was falling apart. Ben was clearly visible, clearly not in any taxi, clearly searching for his daughter. And Millie was pressing herself against Ajax's flank now, using the horse as a shield. "Please," she whispered, so quietly only the horse could hear. "Don't let him take me." Ajax understood. He lowered his great head and squared his shoulders, positioning himself like a living wall between the man and the taxi. His ears were pinned back now, a clear warning signal that even civilians could read. The man stepped back, frustrated and increasingly agitated. "You trying to cause trouble? You're not a cop. This is harassment." Ajax didn't budge. His dark eyes were fixed on the man now, ears still pinned back, every muscle coiled and ready. Neither horse nor rider moved. For the first time since the ceremony began, the careful spell of tradition and pageantry was broken. Not because something went wrong, but because something went exactly right. A Royal Guard's horse had chosen to intervene, and everyone watching could feel the shift in the air. Ben Harding heard the commotion before he saw it. The sharp crack of hooves on stone, his daughter's voice pitched higher than normal, someone raising their voice in clear agitation. "Millie," he called, looking up from his camera bag. He saw her yellow coat caught behind the black flank of the massive horse she'd been admiring just minutes earlier. The same horse that had been standing perfectly still for the past hour. "Millie!" he shouted, alarm spiking through his voice as he surged to his feet. The man in the tan jacket saw him coming and tried to recover the situation. "It's all right," he called out quickly. "Just a little mix-up. She thought I was someone else." But his voice was too fast, too nervous. The words tumbled out like he'd rehearsed them, but was forgetting the script under pressure. Ben wasn't buying it for a second. "Let go of her," he yelled, pushing through the startled crowd. "Get your hands off my daughter." The man released Millie's wrist immediately, stepping back with his palms raised in a gesture of innocence. "Hey, calm down. I was just helping." She looked lost. "Lost?" Ben's voice went dangerously quiet. "She was standing right here where I left her, with you grabbing her arm." A figure in dark uniform emerged from the crowd behind Ben. Royal Military Police, green armband tight against his bicep, eyes sharp and assessing under his beret. "What's the situation here?" Corporal Dean Massey asked, his voice carrying absolute authority. The man in the tan jacket saw the uniform and immediately started backing toward the street. "Nothing, just a misunderstanding. I'm leaving." "Actually, you're not," Massey said firmly. "You match a description we've been circulating. Step to the side and keep your hands where I can see them." "Description of what?" the man protested, but sweat was beading on his forehead now. "I didn't do anything wrong. I was trying to help a lost child." Massey's eyes took in everything. The sweating forehead, the idling taxi with its door hanging open, the red marks on the child's wrist where fingers had gripped too tightly. "Child doesn't look lost to me," he said. "Looks like she's exactly where she's supposed to be." Bell remained motionless in his saddle throughout the exchange. Ajax stood like a monument beside them, still blocking the direct path to the street, still watching every movement with those intelligent dark eyes. Millie ran to her father's arms, burying her face in his jacket. Ben wrapped her up tight, one hand cradling the back of her head. He looked up at the mounted guard, wanting desperately to say thank you, but not sure if he was allowed to speak to him during a ceremony. The look that passed between them said everything that needed saying. The man tried to play it casual, like this was all just some ridiculous overreaction. "Look, I don't know what you think happened here, but I was genuinely trying to help. Kids wander off all the time in crowds like this." Massey wasn't impressed. "Funny thing about helping lost children, usually you try to reunite them with their parents, not lead them away from them." "I was taking her to find him," the man insisted, "by walking her to an unlicensed taxi with its door already open." The man's jaw worked, searching for an answer that wouldn't come. "And when the father showed up 20 feet away, why didn't you call out to him?" Massey continued. "Why try to convince the child to keep moving?" No answer. Massey reached for his radio. "Control, this is MP7 at Horse Guards. Need a unit for questioning on possible attempted child abduction." That's when the man's carefully constructed facade finally cracked completely. His weight shifted, muscles tensing like a runner at the starting line. His eyes darted between Massey, the crowd, and the open street behind him. "Don't," Massey warned, his hand moving to his belt. Too late. The man bolted, low and fast, heading for the gap between the ceremonial barriers and the busy street beyond. He made it exactly 3 steps before Ajax moved. The horse didn't chase him, didn't need to. Ajax simply surged forward and pivoted, using 1,200 pounds of trained muscle to cut off the escape route faster than anyone watching thought possible. The man stumbled backward, completely wrong-footed by the horse's speed and precision. Massey was on him before he could recover his balance. Down he went, hands braced to catch his fall, knees scraping on cold stone. "Hands behind your back," Massey ordered, already reaching for his cuffs. "This is insane," the man gasped. "I didn't touch her. This is all a massive overreaction." "You tried to remove a minor from a public area without parental consent," Massey said calmly, securing the handcuffs with practiced efficiency, "on Crown property, and then you fled when questioned. That's more than enough for me." Click, click. The cuffs locked with a sound like finality. A few people in the crowd applauded, not theatrical or dramatic, just a quiet ripple of relief and approval. Ben held Millie tighter, feeling her small body trembling against his chest. She wasn't crying, which somehow made it worse. Kids should cry when they're scared. The fact that she was staying quiet suggested this wasn't the first time someone had tried to take her somewhere she didn't want to go. The taxi engine was still running. Massey looked toward it, noting the license plate, the driver's position, the way the rear door was still hanging open despite all the commotion. When the driver saw Massey looking, he pulled away from the curb without a word. No attempt to explain his presence or ask about his passenger. Just gone. 2 more officers arrived from the Horse Guard's entrance to assist with processing. The man was loaded into their van, still protesting his innocence, but no longer meeting anyone's eyes. No identification, Massey reported to the detective who showed up 15 minutes later. No wallet, no license, no phone, nothing. But we did find something interesting. Detective Sergeant Claire Fallon raised her eyebrows. What kind of interesting? Zip ties in his jacket pocket. Small ones, the kind you'd use on a child's wrists. And a prepaid mobile phone hidden in his sock. We're running the numbers now. Fallon's expression darkened. Professional, then. Gets worse. He gave 2 names when pressed. Both came back false on system checks. And his clothes, they're all wrong. Expensive shoes, cheap jacket, designer watch, but no identification. Like he dressed to look harmless but forgot the details. Fallon clicked her pen. What about the taxi? Unlicensed. No fare meter running. Driver took off the moment I looked his way. We found cash scattered on the floor inside. Looked like payment in advance. £40 in tens, all crisp and new. And get this, child's toy on the back seat. Little pink rabbit, like bait. She crouched down to Millie's level, her voice gentle but professional. You did exactly the right thing by not going with him, sweetheart. And that big horse, he knew something was wrong too, didn't he? Millie nodded solemnly. Ben looked confused. Would someone like that really have just driven off with her? Fallon's expression went stone cold. That's exactly what we're worried about, sir. This wasn't opportunistic. Calm approach, convincing story, ready escape route. The works. Almost certainly not his first attempt. She stood, brushing off her knees. We'll push this up the chain, cross-reference with other incidents around Westminster. My guess? He's on a security camera somewhere, probably multiple ones. Behind them, Ajax had resumed his perfect ceremonial position. His flanks were dark with sweat now, but his breathing was steady and his expression calm. And above him, Lance Corporal Nathan Bell never moved from his position. Not once throughout the entire incident. Fallon gave a slow nod in the guard's direction. You know, most people still think they're just for show. Massey followed her gaze. People forget what's under all that ceremony. Well, Fallon said, today the horse remembered, and so did the man riding him. The afternoon wore on. The crowds gradually returned to their normal flow, though many kept glancing toward the spot where everything had happened. Some had witnessed enough to understand that something serious had gone down. Others just sensed the lingering tension in the air. The security tape had been removed. The statements had been taken. The street looked exactly as it had an hour earlier. But everything was different now. As the official commotion died down, and the last of the police paperwork was completed, Ben found himself standing with Millie at the edge of the ceremonial area. She was calmer now, colour returning to her cheeks, but she hadn't let go of his hand since the incident. He looked up at the mounted figure who'd maintained his position throughout everything. Lance Corporal Nathan Bell, tall and perfectly still, his chin high and his gloved hands steady on the reins. Ajax stood beneath him, like something carved from black marble, unshaken, dignified, alert. Ben approached slowly, uncertain about protocol, but needing to do this anyway. I don't know if you can hear me, he said quietly, stopping just beside Ajax's shoulder, or if you're even allowed to acknowledge what happened. No response. Not even a flicker of recognition. Ben smiled anyway, tired and full of something between disbelief and profound gratitude. But if you can, thank you, both of you. He looked at Ajax, whose dark eyes tracked Millie without any sign of the earlier tension, just gentle awareness. "You saw what everyone else missed, didn't you?" Ben murmured to the horse. Millie slipped out from behind her father's legs and approached Ajax with the careful reverence of a child in church. She looked up at the massive animal and whispered, "You're brave, like a real knight's horse." Ajax lowered his great head just slightly. Ears forward, eyes soft, completely calm now that the danger had passed. The little girl smiled for the first time since the incident. And though the guard above them never moved, never spoke, never gave any outward sign of acknowledgement, something passed between the three of them in that moment. Understanding without words. Connection without ceremony. Ben placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder and guided her back a step, giving the horse space. They both looked up one final time at the man in the red tunic. He remained exactly as he'd been throughout. No break in posture. No sign of pride or expectation of recognition. Just absolute stillness and quiet authority. Duty incarnate. Ben nodded once, slowly. Then, quietly, they walked away. Behind them, Ajax resumed his perfect ceremonial stance. Lance Corporal Bell never shifted in his saddle. And the gates of horse guards remained under their watch, one man, one horse, and the unspoken promise that some things are more important than ceremony. Later that evening, after the tourists had gone home and the ceremonial duties were complete, Bell finally dismounted in the stable yard behind Wellington Barracks. He removed Ajax's ceremonial tack with the same careful attention he'd shown for years, checking the horse over for any signs of strain or injury. Ajax seemed fine. Better than fine, actually. There was something in his eyes, a satisfaction, maybe. The look of a job well done. "Good lad," Bell murmured, rubbing the horse's neck. "You saw it before I did, didn't you?" Ajax nickered softly, already reaching for his hay net. A younger trooper approached, clearly bursting with questions. "Sir, that thing this afternoon, was that really happening? What we all heard about?" Bell continued brushing Ajax's flank. "What did you hear?" "That you and Ajax stopped someone trying to take a child. That the horse moved to protect her." Bell was quiet for a long moment. Ajax did what he's trained to do, protect people. "But sir, you could have gotten in serious trouble, breaking formation during ceremony." Bell hung up the brush and looked at the young soldier. "Some things matter more than formation." "But what if you'd been wrong? What if it really was just a misunderstanding?" Bell checked Ajax's water bucket, then faced the trooper directly. "Then I'd have apologized and gotten back in position. But we weren't wrong." The younger man waited for more explanation, but none came. Finally, Bell added, "Trust your instincts and trust your horse. They see things we miss." With that, he walked toward the exit, leaving the trooper to think about what real duty looks like. No one gave Bell a commendation for what happened that day. His name didn't appear in any newspapers. No official recognition, no medal ceremony, no parade in his honour. But a 7-year-old girl named Millie Harding went home safely with her father instead of disappearing into something too horrible to imagine. And for a man like Nathan Bell, that was worth more than all the recognition in the world. Sometimes the most important battles aren't fought on distant battlefields with rifles and artillery. Sometimes they happen on busy London streets in broad daylight, when one person and one horse choose to act while everyone else just watches. Sometimes protecting the innocent is as simple as reading the signs, trusting your training, and refusing to look the other way when every instinct you have is screaming that something's wrong. And sometimes the difference between a child going home safely and vanishing forever comes down to a soldier who remembered that protecting people will always be more important than following rules. Would you have noticed what the horse noticed in that crowd? Should ceremonial guards be allowed to break protocol in situations like this? Have you ever seen something suspicious and wondered if you should act? If this story changed how you think about these ceremonial guards, hit that like button and show your respect for the real soldiers behind the ceremony. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this one. We post new Royal Guard stories every single day. And if you know someone who still thinks these guards are just for tourists, send them this video. They might never look at a ceremonial soldier the same way again. Check out our other Royal Guard stories appearing on your screen right now. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place.